So before we can get started writing any code, we need to set up our development environment. Our development environment is just a set of tools that we need to be able to write code and then deploy it to the web for the world to see. Now typically a development environment looks something like this. You have three essential tools. You've got your web browser, you've got a text editor, and then you've got this command prompt. Okay, so you could imagine this is the web page that I might be building here. And I would refresh every time I made changes to the code. Okay, and I would write the actual code here into this text editor, as you can see. Now, this is similar to something like Microsoft Word or any kind of word processor, except they're stripped down and they're designed for code only. So I would be writing actual code into here. And then finally, this tool right here, this command prompt, or sometimes is also called a terminal or a console. This is used for actually controlling the computer and to ship the code through the internet up to the servers. So we'll learn more about all of these tools later, but we're not actually going to get set up like this. Okay, instead what we're going to do is use what we call an integrated development environment, or an IDE. Now the reason why we're going to use an IDE is because getting set up to write code like this with the traditional setup, you'll also hear people call this a local development environment, is that everybody's computer is different. So you may have a totally different version of the programming languages that we need and the libraries and packages of code. And usually when you're a beginner, it's actually incredibly hard to get started just even writing your first line of code, because you have to go through so many installation steps. Now at the end of this video, I'm going to show you where you can go to kind of learn how to get set up locally if you do want to develop like this. But what we're going to use is a cloud-based IDE. So this is an IDE that's inside of the browser itself. And we're going to have all of these tools, these three tools, kind of put together in one place for us. And it's going to make our lives a lot easier because all the languages and libraries we need are already going to be there. So for example, just to illustrate that, I could go in here and I could type Rails-V. And you're going to see that Rails isn't even currently installed on this user account here on this computer that I'm on. And if I were to type Ruby-V just like this, you would see it's got this specific version of Ruby, but you may end up having a totally different version if you even have Ruby installed. So that's just the beginning of the problems that we would have to solve. And usually as a student, it's very easy to get demotivated early on if you have to go through all of these steps. So we're going to make our lives a lot easier by using a cloud-based IDE. So first of all, make sure you're using the Google Chrome browser. So whichever browser you're in right now, go ahead and search in Google for these two words, Google and then Chrome, just like that. And you'll find the first result should be the Google Chrome browser itself, and you should see a download link somewhere. So go ahead and click on their link to get to their website and find that download link, and then click on it and make sure you go ahead and download it for your computer. Okay, and then go ahead and install that, and then once you're up and running, come back and we'll get started here. Okay, once you have Google Chrome installed, it may ask you to sign in, but you don't have to worry about that. They have this kind of sign in feature that allows you to log in and get all your bookmarks. That's totally up to you. Just to point out, one of the main reasons why developers prefer to use Google Chrome is because it has really great built-in features and it's very fast compared to a lot of the other browsers. You could get away with using the other browsers, but throughout this course we're going to use Google Chrome. And just to illustrate that, you can hit right-click somewhere on this screen and then click this Inspect Element button here. And you'll get this little tool set, and you kind of place it either on the right like that or down on the bottom. And this tool set's going to change over time as they update it, but it's a very powerful tool set that we're going to learn more about throughout this course. So I just wanted to illustrate one of the nice features that comes with Google Chrome right away. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is inside the browser, go to nitrous.io, just like that. Okay, so when you get there, you're going to see there's this little announcement at the top that says the original nitrous.io is now called Nitrous Lite. So the reason why I'm showing you this is that this was the original IDE that we used when we created this course originally. Now, Nitrous has made quite a few changes since this course was published. Okay, and they've done away with the original Nitrous that we used throughout the course, and they came up with this new kind of IDE that they rebuilt from scratch called Nitrous Pro. So you can still get to the old Nitrous by going to light.nitrous.io, just like that. But they're not going to be supporting this for that much longer, so you may not even be able to get to this website down the line. They're going to do away with this product altogether. So one of the great things about being a web developer, however, is that the tool that you use for building your application is usually a trivial matter, and what matters more is the actual code, your skills, the things that you're actually writing. So the tools you use don't really matter. They all kind of work the same, and there's a really good kind of free alternative out there called Cloud9. And you can get to it by Googling Cloud9 just like that. And you should see one of the first results is c9.io, just like that. So you could also get to their website just by going to c9.io. And this is the recommended IDE that I want all students to be using going forward. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to get set up using Cloud9 so that we can start writing some code. So again, make sure you're at c9.io in your browser bar and then hit enter, and you should be at their homepage. Now keep in mind their web page may change over time and they may make improvements, but you're just looking for the sign up button so that you can set up a free account. So I'm going to click this right here, and then I'm going to fill out this form. I'm going to check off that I'm not a robot box, and then I'm going to click create your free account. Okay, I've just clicked the create free account button, and I've got this prompt here from Google Chrome asking to save my password. You can go ahead and click save password. That way every time you come back it should pre-populate for you, hopefully. And you should get this confirmation that says that your account is ready, and you'll also get a verification link in your email inbox. So make sure you go to that and click that link so that you can confirm your account. And then once you're ready, you want to just go to your dashboard. Okay, so I've just clicked the verification link in my email inbox, and now I'm going to click this sign in button right here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and fill out the same username and password that I just set up and get signed in. Okay, so I've just signed in and I'm at my Cloud9 dashboard. As you can see, I've got cloud9.io or c9.io in the browser / my username. Now, this interface, again, it may change over time, but all you're looking to do now is create a new workspace. That's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to click this button here to create a new workspace. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and give it a name. I'm just going to name it coder-manual-rails. Okay, and you can name it that exact same thing so that you know exactly what this workspace is for. Okay, and then what we're going to do is just leave it as public. And then down here, what we're going to do is choose Rails as our template. Okay, so look for Rails as your template down there. And then we're going to go ahead and say create workspace. Okay, so this is our brand new IDE, or Integrated Development Environment. Okay, so we've got all the tools we need now to be able to write code. What we need to do next, however, is install the proper version of Rails so that you and I both are using the exact same version. That's going to help us to avoid any conflicts going forward. Okay, so just really quick so you understand what's going on here. To the left, you've got this file system, okay? It's kind of like your hard drive, okay, with all these folders and files right here. Okay, and this upper part works like a text editor, okay? You can go in here and edit text. You can also do other things that we'll look at in a second with these tabs. And then finally down here, you've got your console or command prompt, like I was saying. Now on a Mac, that tool is called Terminal, and then on Windows, I believe it's called Command Prompt. So we've got all of that stuff built in right here inside of this browser. And the cool thing about having it all set up in the browser is we can log in from any computer and get access to our same code base. That's the beauty of using a cloud-based IDE like Cloud9. Okay, so let's get moving with installing Rails properly. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of close out this tab right here at the top. You may or may not have this default tab that's showing here, but I just want to close this out of the way. So I'm just going to hit this X right here to close that. Okay, so I've got a blank slate up here, and then down below I've got my terminal here. So you want to make sure you've got that. If you don't have this terminal where you've got this little prompt that's telling you, kind of all of this stuff, your username and so on, then you need to click this plus sign, and you want a new terminal. Okay, so that's all you're looking for, is just getting that new terminal. I'm going to close that duplicate one now. And we don't need this one here either. That's called JavaScript. Okay, so I'm going to close that as well. Okay, so you've just got this terminal here, and that's all we need for now. Now what happened is when we set up our account on Cloud9 and we opened up this Rails template, it by default kind of created a Rails application for us. Now we're going to do this by hand anyway down the line, so I want to start with a totally clean slate here. Okay, what we're going to do first is delete this Rails application that's in here. And we can do that by going to our root directory. Okay, so follow along and type in these commands. I'm going to type cd and hit enter. That stands for change directory. Okay, and then from there I'm going to type ls and then enter. And you'll see there's a folder in here called workspace and another folder called lib, or for library. Now we don't see those folders in here, but what you need to know is that workspace doubles for this folder here, meaning it's really the same folder, it just has a different name up here than it does right here. Okay, so what we're going to do is delete all of the contents inside that folder. And the way we do that is with one special command here. We type rm space -r and then the folder name itself. So we're going to delete workspace, just like that. Okay, so hit enter. You shouldn't have any confirmation message, but hopefully it worked. Let's type ls to list out what's there. Okay, and so there's nothing in there anymore. And if I go here and kind of fold this folder up and open it back, it looks like everything's still sitting in there. But what we're going to do is create workspace again. So we're going to do mkdir, and that's to create a new directory or make a directory. And we're going to call it workspace, just like that, and hit enter. Okay, so now let's type ls again. That's to list out what's inside the current directory. Okay, and if I refresh all this now, you'll see there we go. There's nothing there anymore. I had to hit that arrow a few times, but now we've got this blank folder in here. And again, it's called Coder Manual Rails here, or whatever you named your workspace. But down here in the actual terminal, the computer recognizes it as workspace, just like that. Okay, so that's fine. So as long as you've got that empty folder in there now, you're good to go. So just now, you've already learned a few Linux commands that are really helpful to know as a programmer, okay? And so when I say Linux, all I mean is that's the language we just typed down here to actually control our Cloud9 kind of virtual computer. You can think of Cloud9 as a virtual computer that we're using instead of loading it onto our actual computer itself. Okay, so you can also kind of lift this up a little bit if you find that little gray bar so that you can see a little bit more if you want. Okay, so what we're going to do now is make sure you and I both have the same exact version of Rails installed. Okay, so since we selected a Rails template to set up Cloud9, if we type Rails-V and there's a space there, okay, and then I hit enter, it'll output a certain version of Rails. But what we're going to do is I'll make sure we're using a version called 4.1.0. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is delete Rails altogether first. So we're going to type gem uninstall Rails. And watch the spacing there, okay? So GEM and then uninstall Rails. And then hit enter. Okay, so it's uninstalled that. And we need to uninstall one more thing. We're going to type gem uninstall and then rail ties, just like that. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. And it's asking me to confirm this, so I'm going to just say Y for yes, and then hit enter again. And then again, I'm just going to type Y again and hit enter. Okay, so now we've successfully uninstalled those two gems, okay, Rails and then rail ties. Now make sure you're pausing the video as needed so that you're typing exactly what you're seeing here on the screen. Okay, so you have to be really careful as you do this, these steps, because a lot of students actually get hung up in this process of getting set up, just from small little typos. So now we're going to go ahead and install Rails version 4.1.0. So the way we do that is just right down here, we're going to type gem install Rails space -v, okay, and then 4.1.0, and then dash no -ri space no -rdoc. So this command that we entered here is we're saying let's install Rails itself. It's a gem, or a package of code as we call it in the Ruby world. And then we want a specific version number as we're passing in right there. And then right here, this added stuff that I have here, that's just to make the installation go a little bit quicker. Without adding these flags as we call them here, we would be downloading documentation, or really just like, kind of user manual data that we don't really need. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click or hit enter now. And this will take a second, but it's installing Rails version 4.1.0. Now make sure when it's done, you should see that you may have a different number of gems installed. That's okay. Just make sure that there were no errors during this process. Okay, so if you got some kind of an error, an internet connection error, you might see an error called remote fetcher. Just try to run this command again until it works properly. Okay, and that's it. So now that we have Rails installed, we are good to go, and we can start writing some code. And just to confirm, you can type Rails space -v and hit enter. And you should see now, it should say 4.1.0 for the version number. You can likewise type Ruby space -v like this. And as long as you have a version number there that's 2.0 or greater, you're going to be totally fine. Now really quick, we can test this out by generating a quick Rails app just to make sure everything's working. So down here in your command prompt, you want to change your directories into the workspace directory, which is this folder here, okay? So to do that, down here in the command prompt, we type cd space workspace, just like that, and then hit enter. And then you'll notice if you did that right, the prompt actually changes, and now it says you're inside the workspace folder itself. So we're inside this folder. There's nothing in there. That's why there's no arrow, and we can't see anything inside. Likewise, if we were to type ls and then hit enter, you'll see nothing comes back because there's nothing inside there. But what we're going to do now is generate a Rails application and put it inside there. So Rails has a really nice way of doing that. We just type Rails space new, and then we're just going to call it test_app, just like that, and then hit enter. So this will take a second, but what it's doing is generating that Rails application. If you look at the file system now in the upper left here, you'll see there's this new folder in there, okay? And if you don't see that, you should be able to click refresh the file tree, okay, from this little gear icon right here. So refresh it, and you should see the new folder for you. Okay, so once this is done in here, we can now jump inside this Rails folder that we called test app by going in there by typing cd space and then test_app. So we're changing directories. That's what cd stands for. And then jumping into that test app. Okay, so now from here, all we have to do is type this special command. It's called Rails space server, like that. And then we need to type -p and then $, and then capital PORT, and then -b, and then space $, and then IP, just like that, and then hit enter. Then once you've done that, it should pop up and say that you've got your site running at a specific URL. You can click that, just like that, and you'll see it now inside. So this doubles as a browser and a text editor, this upper part. So we're kind of inside a browser. Okay, it's like a browser within a browser, okay? And you can actually just copy that address, okay? And I can do Command-C on a Mac. You can do a Control-C on Windows. Copy that address, open up a new browser tab, just like that, and paste it in. And then there you go. You've got the default homepage of a Rails application. Now, if you weren't able to see that, you could also hit this preview button here and then click preview running application. And there you go. It should pop up that home page if everything's working properly. And you'll see down here the console has changed into this log of activity. Okay, so we can close these out for now. And now we know that it's all working. Down here we're going to exit out of this little logging system by hitting Control-C on the keyboard. And there you go, you should be back with the prompt here. Now I'm going to jump one folder back so that I'm inside this workspace folder, okay, which also doubles with that name there that we see here. So I'm going to do that by typing cd space and then dot dot, just like that, and then hit enter. You'll see my prompt has changed. I've jumped a folder back, okay, kind of a level outward, okay. If you think about it, these are kind of levels inward as you see it kind of get nested in. So we just jumped back into this highlighted folder here. And then from here, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that test application since we don't need it. And we can do that by typing rm space dash rf and then test underscore app. And you may actually be able to just right click on this and hit delete. That could probably work, but this is kind of the Linux way of doing it down here. Okay, so hit enter, and there you go. That entire application has just been deleted. Now earlier I did mention that I would show you kind of how you can get set up locally if you didn't want to use something like a cloud-based IDE. However, I do not recommend that you go forward developing locally if you're new to programming. Okay, so if you did want to install Ruby on Rails locally to write code, you would want to go to a website over here. So I'm just going to open another tab in Google Chrome, and I'm just going to go to guides.railsgirls like that .com/install. Okay, and then hit enter, and you'll be taken to this kind of website. It's a great website with a lot of cool resources, but they've got a nice step-by-step for you, okay, based on whichever computer. If you're on a Mac, then you want to set up for OS X, okay, and if you're on Windows, so on. If you're on a Linux computer, so on. And you're going to need to use your command prompt, okay? They're going to give you these commands that you have to enter in. So on a Mac, you would search for an application called Terminal. That's the one that I opened up earlier. That's that command prompt where we enter Linux commands. So any Linux commands we enter here would affect this actual computer that I'm on, whereas what we did here was we entered Linux commands and we were affecting kind of a remote computer. You could think of it as a computer that's somewhere in a data warehouse that Cloud9 lets us use for free. So like I said, if you're new to programming, I don't recommend that you take this route and try to install it all locally. That's something that you can try and do later after you've learned a little bit more about Ruby and Rails, because like I said, a lot of students find it as a major hurdle and it keeps them from actually learning what matters most, which is actual coding. Okay, so you can check that out if you want to install it locally. And then last but not least, we're going to go ahead and install Sublime Text. That's the text editor that we're going to use just to practice some HTML. So you can search for Sublime Text just like that in the Google bar. And you'll see the first result should be sublimetext.com over here. So you can click on that, and then you'll find a download link somewhere. Again, the website may change over time, but you want to download it for your system. So if you're on a Mac, you want OS X. If you're on Windows, you want to pick whichever version of Windows you have. And just go ahead and download and install that. We're going to use that later. Alright, so once you've done all of these steps, you're pretty much ready to go and get started coding.